Now let's have a look at exit options. So if the business continues to decline and it's not able to reestablish itself in the industry, then it may choose to exit. So companies that are insolvent, which means they can't meet their financial obligations on time, they have two exit options. So voluntary administration or involuntary administration. So voluntary administration involves the business appointing an administrator to examine the business's financial situation and the options that they have available to them moving forward. So, an administrator can be engaged by the company or can be ordered by the court to fulfill the role. And an administrator is always someone who's a third party. So, they're independent and they're registered, and so you're not going to have any conflict of interest with them being part of the business and having any kind of biases towards the business in favor or against. So some examples of businesses that have had some struggles over recent years and have had that experience with voluntary administration. We've got Dick Smith, Jeans West, Virgin Australia, and QCE. So we know, of course, that, for example, Virgin is still operating now, but it did go into voluntary administration and it had to be bought out by an overseas company, I believe. And equally, Jeans West is still operating, but they also went into voluntary administration. And so let's have a look now at the comparison. This is about voluntarily appointing that administrator, and in comparison, involuntary administration, just as it sounds, is going to involve creditors. So those people who the business owes the money to. They seek or obtain a court order for the company's financial position to be investigated by an administrator. So you'll find that voluntary administration is more common. Usually it would be more likely that the business would recognize its own position and appoint an administrator themselves rather than being forced into it like this by creditors. If you think about reputational damage, it's probably better for a business reputationally to do it voluntarily because it shows that they have that awareness of their situation and that they want to get the best outcome for any shareholders or customers that they may have. Whereas involuntary administration may be seen as not taking responsibility for the business's situation and forcing creditors to take action themselves instead. So some outcomes of these two types of administration, voluntary and involuntary. So a deed of company arrangement is something I believe Virgin Australia went into. So this is a binding agreement between company and creditors. So binding means that it's legally binding. You have to stick to the agreement. It's not just a casual kind of agreement that could be broken. So an agreement between the company and the creditors, the people who are owed the money, that details how the business's finances will be handled until those liabilities are repaid. So a majority of the company's creditors must vote in favor of a deed of company arrangement. So it's that voting system to make sure that a majority of the creditors are satisfied with the decision that they've come to. Now, liquidation is something that happened with Dick Smith. So you still may see Dick Smith around the name of the business, and that's because the assets of the company were sold and so someone else now owns those, and that's why we still see that name around. So assets are sold at discounted rates, and the resulting profits from those sales are distributed to creditors in preparation for the company's closure. So you have got those assets and you're going to make the most of them by trying to sell them off. And with that money, you're going to um, try and pay off as much as you can of what you owe. So again, you've got this idea that it's got to be the majority in favor. So the creditors have to vote in favor of that liquidation strategy. Now, recommencing operations is not something that we see very often. Once a business has gone into voluntary or involuntary administration, it usually goes one of the two ways that we've just gone through, but recommencing could be an option as well. So the administrator who is doing the investigation may return control to the directors. So this means that the administrator has deemed that the business is fit to continue, and it's rare though because the business would need to have that evidence to show that it can recover from the financial issues and it can make all of those pay all of those creditors the money that they're owed and meet those financial obligations.